There's a second ding. Welcome to Section 31, episode number 269. I'm Dan Hammond, and my normal co-host is traveling for work this week, so I brought with me the chairman, Charlie Plane. Thank you for joining me.
You are more than welcome.
Awesome. So the reason I brought Charlie in is we had a San Diego tournament while I was away at Origins, and Sarog was away at Origins as well. Charlie, it looks like there were 4 players, and this was first edition OTF.
It was. Our 1E regional is at the end of the month, and we haven't played constructed 1E in a while, so we decided to do a warm-up tournament.
How many rounds did you end up going?
We did 3 rounds because we only had 4 players, but that was okay. It was very low-key tournament. It was fun. I eked my way into second place, and the universe did not seem to implode without in the zone. So it was kind of nice.
Oh, right. So this is the first, at least local event without that being in the pool. Did you notice it coming to play? Did anyone get any 60-point turns or something?
I don't recall a specific instance of somebody solving 2 missions in one turn. But I'll tell you what, it felt better. Like knowing there was one point against Thomas when he was more than 50 points ahead of me. I believe it was against Thomas, and I didn't have that, like, why am I bothering to continue to play? I mean, it's Thomas, and Thomas doesn't run ref cards, so that's different. But maybe it was against, I don't remember. It was against somebody, but I never felt like, oh, I can actually come back in this game. And I take it back. I did solve 2 missions in one turn that would have gotten me in the zone prior to that. So I think it might have been Thomas, because he was ahead of me, and then on my turn I solved 2 missions to get ahead of him, but couldn't do the third one, and then he won on his next turn.
Okay.
But it was definitely a sense of, I could not have done this if in the zone had been, if I had been playing anybody in San Diego but Thomas within the zone in the format, it would have, I would have wasted points, and I would not have been able to come back from the game. So.
Was anybody specifically playing something to take advantage of that rule? And was anybody playing VIP conference or something like that?
I didn't. No, I mean, I didn't. There was no 60-point missions or anything along those lines. I mean, there were bonus points, but I don't think it was more than usual. I was originally going to build a Starfleet deck that would aim to parallax arguers and request the item every turn.
So you get potentially 2 freebie card plays?
Yeah, the idea being I'd get a free Mako download with military assault command operations, or a free 4 card draws with temporal shifting, or 10 points on the other end of the spectrum. And Matt was telling me on the car ride, he's like, you always give the points. And I'm like, that's fine. If I'm getting 10 points a turn, on turn 5, I'm halfway to winning the game, and all I've got to do is solve 2 missions, Or if it goes, to 8 turns, now I'm more than halfway to winning the game, and I don't have to do a planet in space, Or I could just do, a 70-point mission somehow, and get to 140. So I felt like options were open. I ran out of time to build that deck, so I ended up just playing a more simple TNG Klingon deck. But even in there, I had Soren trying to get Soren in the Nexus, and I had Arbiter of Succession, which you could do those before within the zone if you were careful, but now it was kind of like, oh, I solved my mission with 3 mission specialists, so that's 50 points, and Soren got sucked in the Nexus, so those points don't count. I didn't have to worry about that, and I felt good to not have to worry about that.
Yeah, I played a deck similar to that, I think at a Gen Con about 2 years ago, right after it came out, Klingons in the Nexus and Soren running around, and that was a lot of fun. But you're right, if you do things in the wrong order, the deck is made to, that particular deck was made to solve missions for, a good amount of points, and if everything happened at the same time, you're kind of out of luck. I think I remember running away from the Nexus on my turn, so that on the next turn, the Nexus would move over on my opponent's turn, and he'd get sucked in. I'd get 10 points, and I'd win, as long as my opponent hadn't solved the mission. Whereas if I didn't have to worry about it in the zone, I would have just done it on one turn. I wouldn't have to worry about it at all. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly sensitive to the complaints that there might be a broken 100-point deck out there, but the counter argument to me is, and this is ultimately what we talked about behind the scenes too, was if that deck still exists, let's fix that. Let's not lean on In the Zone, which is an inherently flawed and bad card for the game, to keep that brokenness away. Like if somebody shows up at Continentals or a regional with a 0 to 100 deck on turn 2, fix that deck. Don't blame it on In the Zone being gone. So.
Right. There's clearly something else wrong if that's in the pool, right? And it'd have to be 100 to 140 to 0 to 140 deck, right? You'd have to still plan it. Anyway, yes, agreed. Yeah. All right. So it looks like Thomas once again ran the day. This time, he again a couple of a modified loss this time to Johnny and a couple of wins. He still came out on top. He was running Federation.
Yeah, he was playing. I think it was either the same deck he played last time or a slight variant. It was TNG Feds with Camp Kittimer to play Enterprise B people free, and then he was using Guardian of Forever for card draws and to get his people from Enterprise from the past. I had a fun moment in that game against Tom. I played Thomas, I think first.
Yeah, first round.
And I mean, Thomas is an excellent player, and his primary strategy is 4 seed cards and then 26 dilemmas. So it was brutal, but I felt in it against him, which was nice. I mean, he was able to maneuver slightly better and clear out some missions before I could really get going. But the highlight for me was at one point the Nexus was at Viridian 3. Like the actual Nexus card was at that spaceline location, and then sadly I blew up the Enterprise with the Nexus like a mission or two later down the spaceline. But it was pretty awesome. It was almost that perfect story moment where I got the Enterprise at Viridian 3 with the Nexus. That would have been pretty cool. But.
Yeah, that's what makes 1E awesome, because you can crazy things like that. It just it seems to happen. The cards are so much story based. You get that every once in a while. Yeah. So the last time I think I played against Thomas, or I heard Thomas playing a tournament, he was running that awesome. I think it was Admiral Kirk. So you can pitch a card and then get the guy back with nanoprobe resuscitation. So this is not the same Federation deck then.
No, he had the other Kirk, Generations Kirk, which is score 5 points when you help solve a mission, and then he was doing Test Mission 2 with Timison and Kirk and a mission specialist. So Test Mission 2 goes from 20 points to like 40 points.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was actually a fun deck. I mean, it was good, and he and I were on opposite ends of the space line. So I keep forgetting, especially when I'm playing Klingons, I need to build the space line so that I'm in his way, so that I can take advantage of coming. It didn't really matter because he was playing. He had, I think, 4 walls of ships on the table, and he had the Enterprise D and the future Enterprise out. So it's like I wasn't really gonna come after him and hit him. I just really couldn't hit that kind of firepower. But it was, I wasn't interacting like I should have been. I learned that lesson by the time I played Johnny in the 3rd round. But Thomas is just a great player. He plays great dilemmas, and he deserves the win. I mean, he's excellent. I didn't feel like it was a bad game. I didn't feel like I was trounced. I felt like I was close.
Looks like Johnny was playing a Maquis deck, and he got a couple of modified wins and a loss. What was his deck like?
His deck was cool. It was a couple DMZ missions, a couple Badlands missions. He was doing DS9 Maquis, so he's getting the generic Maquis report, the DS9 guy, and he also used Bajoran Resistance Cell. He wasn't doing the espionage cards. He was doing the handshake draw engine. So he'd play a couple people handshake, and play a couple people, But
Wow, I'm looking at his deck list. 75 cards and 14 handshakes.
yep, he
Wow.
played a handshake I think every turn or almost every turn. Um, it was good. I mean, he played a lot of people. He played Hidden Fighter a couple times to get his ships. Uh, Johnny was the game when I finally, remembered that I was able to interact, and I I moved over to his mission. I had stopped him with personal duty friendly fire, so he was stopped with most of his people on a ship, and I think it was a Bajoran scout vessel, so it's like 744 or something terrible. So I flew a bird of prey over, and he looked at he had like 10 cards in his hand already. So he was thinking about Scorched Hand, and he looked at my side of the board, and I had one ref card up. I wasn't using Q's 10 Civil War, so he was, thinking through it, and ultimately he picked his ship up. I wasn't running Scorched Hand. I was running a deck with light ref cards because I feel that I crutched on them too much. Like I always run Q's 10 Civil War, and I always run those 13 ref cards, and I wanted to sort of play a deck with as few as possible
Hmm.
and see if there were shenanigans that made me regret that, and there really wasn't today, or that day. But um, yeah, Johnny played well. His Maquis ran afoul of Quantum Incursions. I think he scanned it 5 times, and 4 out of the 5 times it came up with empathy as one of the requirements, which they just they don't have and can't play an empathy person.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean, he would have won had that dilemma scanned a non-empathy requirement on the last turn. But as it was, it came up with empathy, and I had more points. So
I know he's mentioned he's a fan of that card. Did the fandom tank a little bit after coming up
no, we,
randomly
we
against
talked
him?
about it, and he still really likes that card. He thinks Johnny is a strong proponent of wanting skills to matter, and that card very much makes skills matter. It's not
Yeah.
like just throw a bunch of bodies at it. Like, and he certainly was like luck was not in my favor, and I was like, you're absolutely right. If it had scanned something different, you would have solved and won a couple turns ago. But I got lucky, and I was able to get what I needed and get ahead of him on points, and held him to a modified. Or I got a modified win against him, which was cool. But it was a fun deck. I mean, it wasn't doing too many tricks. He just seemed to be playing good people and uh, good mobility, and having the region helps because all your missions are together, which
Yeah.
is nice. So.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, that takes us to Matt, who doesn't look like he got 2 modified losses in the first 2 games, so at least he was in them in a full loss against TV in the last round, playing Bajoran. Uh, what was his dex shtick?
So he was playing DS9 mostly. He put a picture on his Facebook page. I guess all of his personnel were part of a couple. So like everybody that was in the deck was romantically involved with somebody else that was in the deck.
Wow.
So
All right.
he by like turn 3 or 4, he had 3 couples at the holodeck, the holosuite, drawing 3 cards a turn with Cafe des Artistes. It was fun. I mean, he ops downloaded Defiant on the first turn, so he could free play everybody regardless of what site he had. He grabbed a couple sites with the downloader. It was a slow roll deck. Like it took him a while to build up, but I was worried. By the time he went out to start doing stuff, he just had everybody in his deck in play, and they were all heroes. Like he was a raider, playing a raider, and playing the intendant and Barial and all these people. Raider, getting all these cards into play.
I'm looking at his deck list, and his personnel are all tanks.
Yeah, it was crazy, and I got lucky and stopped him a few times. The play that was it was weird. I was playing Klingon, and he at one point played Arbiter of Succession on my ship. He had Grilka and Quark in his deck, and that was one of his bonus points. Was like he would play it on them and get 10 points. Well, he didn't have those 2 out, so he played it on my ship. It turns out that the 2 leaders that I had on the ship had the same strength, so they battled and nobody won. So he didn't get points out of it. So he played it and it got nothing.
So I didn't even get one of your guys killed.
No, didn't even get to kill one of my guys. So it was just kind of like, oh man, that was really unlucky. And then on my turn, I beamed down my 9 and my 8, and I made them fight and got my 10 points. It was kind of fun. It was a good deck. The main trick that he did, and I had never seen this before. He seeded Quailor 2, the non-aligned mission where all your aligned people are on stasis, and
Yeah.
then at one of my planets he seeds Magic Carpet Ride.
Yeah.
So I solve the mission, and he sucks my ship and most of my people over to Quailor 2, where they're just trapped for the rest of the game. It didn't. It sucked. It was not fun. It's not a good experience. But it was. It ended up not mattering. I just was able to stop him long enough to stay ahead there.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. I seem to remember that being a popular play back in the day when you could play as many as you want. At least in OTF, you're limited to seating 2, right?
Yes, I believe
Wow.
so.
But that's still probably 2 out of your 3 planet locations. Yikes.
Yeah, and we were talking about it in the chat room after. I wasn't really complaining, but I was kind of like, that's kind of a nasty trick. And if I was a new player and that happened to me, I'd be really unhappy. And ultimately, Ken Tuff said, it's really easy to see coming once you've seen it.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, that may be true, but still, if that was my first game or one of my first games, I would be really unhappy.
Yeah, fair enough. And it looked like he had, it's only 3 non-aligned people. He had no intention of solving it, so that meant it was a dead mission for him.
Well, he put Memory Wipe in his deck, so he could.
Oh my!
Get into
I see
it
that now. That's pretty cool.
It just happened to be especially sucky. He was telling me, because if I'm playing Mirror Quadrant or I'm playing Gamma Quadrant or I'm playing Delta Quadrant, it doesn't do anything because you can't cross space lines with the Magic Carpet Ride. But it also especially sucked because his Quailor 2 ended up on the far end of the space line, so his love interests were pulling my people over there.
Oh man!
Nice. And at one point, I had hit the Nexus, and the Nexus was at Quailor 2, and I'm like, cool, I'll pick up my guy. And he's like, nope, people in stasis can't be relocated. And I'm like, you looked that up, didn't you? And he's like, I sure did. I'm like, I hate you a little bit.
Nice. All right. Well, congrats to TV for winning the tournament, and it sounds like you guys had a pretty good time. But
yeah, it was fun.
Did no triples afterward?
No, Brian came out and hung out for like the last round, but he had to go pick up his wife, so he couldn't stick around. And Johnny's kind of lucky to come out to play Trek. Doesn't want to push his luck and play triples, so we'd only had 3, so we just called it. Said we'll play triples at the regional. So
yeah, fair enough. Right on. Well, congratulations to TV and Charlie for coming in second. Nicely done. That was the local gaming. Now, every once in a while, or the last couple of years, when we go off to trip off to Origins, we'll have either a second edition tournament or triples or something, but usually both. But there was no real interest this year, so we didn't do it. So Rogue and I did not play any Star Trek over the weekend, except some non-card based Star Trek. But we'll talk about that next week when Rogue rejoins the podcast and we talk about the full Origins trip. But I did briefly want to mention we played an awful lot of the Pathfinder adventure card game. I know this is a game that we played at Gen Con last year, and we kind of bought it locally and have been playing it. And you guys rolled it last Friday for games night, right?
Yes, we did. I was excited that it came on Wednesday, and we're like, okay, we're playing this because we didn't have enough to run my regular game, so it was fun.
Is that your plan for this? Is that your vote for this Friday as well?
I don't see why not. I mean, it's tough. It is.
Oh yes, yes it is
significantly more difficult than the ones that I've played. So we played from 6:30 till midnight, and we only got 2 adventures done because we had to fail one of them. It was tough, and there's a bit of learning curve because there's some new mechanics, and we were all playing new classes. Like we took all new classes. Like I played the summoner, which is my favorite thing ever. Matt was the shaman, Jesse was the blood rager, and Brian was the hunter, I think. So
no one was playing the new Kiara.
Nobody played the new Kiara. Brian, myself, and Matt all played classes with cohorts.
Oh, okay, that makes
because we
sense.
wanted to try them out. So the only one we didn't have that had the cohort was the paladin, but
Yeah.
it was fun. It's a good evolution. It is hard, and we're looking forward to progressing through it a little bit more. How far did you get?
Well, I did the demo, and I think I played the paladin. That's the one with the horse, right?
Yeah, the paladin gets the warhorse.
Yeah, the self-centered uh, jerk with the horse. Yeah. So I get to experience that. That was kind of fun. Maybe I'll pick that one up if no one else did. And then Rogue and I sat down and played organized play through the first adventure path. Or, the first start. The whole thing's an adventure path. The first adventure deck. Or the first 5 scenarios. Call it that.
Were you doing the box one, or were you
No,
doing deck
we were
one?
using there's organized play that goes with Rise of
Oh,
the Wrath.
right.
So
Okay.
we were playing those, but we were using the box Wrath of the Righteous. So I've seen a lot of the monsters coming out of there and just destroy us, and a lot of all the barriers that don't have a check that everyone just has to fight against, and then you can't use things that beat barriers because you're not actually facing the barrier anymore. Now you're fighting the monster, and oh my gosh, it was brutal. I played the fighter, the Valorous fighter that I had made and played last Gen Con and had gotten through the first adventure. So I had a few upgrades, so I was okay. Rogue was playing, I think the sorceress, and we got all the way through the first 5 adventures, and we were mopping our brow because we had lost one of them. Then Rogue was off doing something, so I started with another group playing Radillo, the one of the spellcasters, and it was tough starting from scratch. I managed to get 2 or 3 games in, and then Rogue came back, and we started the second deck, the second adventure, which was levels 2A through 2E, and it was a lot. On one hand, it was a lot of playtesting because it was not as detailed and written out as much. The folks putting this together, it was definitely a playtesting session. So we were making notes here and there, but it was also very, very brutal. There's the monster that every time you swing a weapon at it, your weapon is buried, and you have potential of fighting as many as are players in one turn. So you get shredded. It was the worst. It was edge of my seat kind of thing. We managed to get all the way through it to the end. So we'll be looking for level 3 when we get to Gen Con, but. After that, we started over again. Rogue brought a new thief character, and I brought back my sorcerer, and we ran like a middle of the pack run, like it was 1C or something. And I died, and the guy that we were playing with, the cleric, the bard died, and Rogue and Tanis decided, you know what, we're just gonna maybe explore once and then walk away. So we failed that scenario. So all the work that I had done on that first level character, that's all up in the smoke. So. I'm starting over again on that at Gen Con.
Yeah, I played the summoner, which was the pure caster of the ones that we had. Mm-hmm. I got down to like, I'm going to die if one of you don't draw a cure, or if I take any damage at least 2 or 3 times. It was brutal. And the summoner can add cards to his deck, because the summoner is really cool. The way the summoner works is whenever you fight a monster, you can add it to your hand. And then you can put them back in the box to do stuff. And the main mechanic is you can fight with your strength plus your arcane die, and then you discard monsters to get extra dice. And depending on how many traits the monster you discard shares with the monster you're fighting, you get more dice.
Cool. All right. So you're summoning a monster to throw at that monster, and
So okay. I had a worm demon in my hand at one point, and I had to fight another. It was a demon henchman, and it was the worm demon's like basic demon outsider, and basic and elite don't count. But I was fighting a demon outsider, so I ended up rolling like 3d6 plus d10 plus d4 plus 2 to fight this monster, which was pretty good, and it was cool. And later you can feat into discard monsters to get dice on skill bonuses. The other thing, you can banish a monster to draw a card. So if you are, if you kill a monster and you just got nothing, you can draw cards. So it's a fun class to play, but you will burn through your deck quickly. So you need to make sure you bring a healer with you.
Yeah, when I was traveling with the bard, so I was getting healing every once in a while, but the bard wasn't doing very well either, and I for some reason, when you look down and you see, wow, I got a bunch of cards, and then you go exploring, and then the monster comes up, and you look down, and wow, I thought I had an attack spell, and that's pretty much it. I think I rolled 3d6 because I got a couple of blessings, and my hand size was 6, and I had 5 cards left by the end, and it was like, oh man, that's
That was
too
the
bad.
that was the other thing about the summoner is if you play an attack spell, you banish it. So all the spells in the deck are buffs. They're like support spells
Okay,
because I mean you can get an attack spell and use it. It just is gone.
yeah.
So because you're supposed to fight by summoning monsters. So
Oh.
I had it's all basic level stuff, but I had all the like strength +3, charisma +3, all those spells in my deck, so that it's interesting because that makes you think he's like a support class, like because I play the bard in the base set, and that's very support. But he was pretty beefy when he was fighting. I mean, that's a not D10 plus D6 isn't bad for a base attack roll.
Yeah, it's a good start.
You can buff on top of it. So
Yeah, right on. And I got one other thing. I got a bunch of blessings signed by one of the artists who was there, Jeff Carlisle. Signed a bunch of my blessings, so I'll be filtering those back in our decks next time we play the Wrath of the Righteous. No, the
excellent.
Rise of the Rune Lords back there. Very good. So, like I said, I played that a bunch. I played a couple other things that I'll talk about when Rogue's back. And there was one other task I had, and that was I remember you were flipping through my Trek binder a couple of weeks back, and you said, "Why do you have a Rishadan Port in here?" And it was because I found it, and in my box outside, this card that I'd never played, and it was worth a lot. So I went to the floor, and I went to a couple of different spots, and someone said they'd give me this much for it, and someone said they'd give me that much for it. Finally, uh, one of the companies gave me $72 in store credit. So for an extra $20, I got a box of dragons.
Awesome. I think we should draft.
I know. I'm so excited. I figure between me, you, Matt, and Brian, and possibly Jesse, one of these days, because Rogue's not really a fan, but between now and Gen Con, we've got to crack this open. And if there's any high value foils or something that I don't need a copy of, I could just keep doing this indefinitely because I know.
I mean, if you basically spent $20 for that box, you'll definitely get more than $20 for your rares out of there. So if you get lucky, you will be able to. You could basically do the same thing. Yeah, like we could draft, keep the rares in nice pristine condition, and then just repeat ad nauseum. So.
And I know I've got because I went through a stack of foils when I was doing after I found that port. I'm like, well, what else have I got? So I kind of went through a few of the decks I had, see what foils were in there. I didn't have any. I really thought I had because I got a lot of Marcadian masks for some reason. I really thought I had one of the it was like a Rain Geyser or something that was a foil, and it's another $100 card, and I can't find it anywhere. So either I never had it or it walked away at some point. But I know I've got a bunch of cards, at least 10 cards that were in the $5 to $10 to $12 range. So if I don't find anything out of this box that's worthwhile, I'll go out and grab 10 more of those and go back and we'll do this again because it'll be fun. We'll do that at some point. I got a box of dragons, and I kept walking around the show floor, saying, I got a box of dragons.
Yeah. I'm very excited. I don't get too into Magic. I'm not great at it. I'm enjoying following it as a designer and a longtime fan of the game. They're doing some cool stuff. I'm excited about the next set they're doing, which is the last core set. But they're also they had this big article that went up last week where they're talking about we're upping our game with the story, so they're going to start telling like a long interconnected story across the blocks. Well, so like because typically what they've done is like, okay, here's a block, we're on a new plane, here's the story, move on.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically built this stable of planeswalkers, and they're like, we're going to tell a really big story now. And the core set that's coming out this summer is called Magic Origins, and it's the origin story of their 5 main characters, one in each color, that are all going to play major parts in this big story they're going to do. And the coolest thing, I think, this is super nerdy Magic talk, so forgive me, but they introduced a couple of years ago double-faced cards, where it was a card frame on both sides, and you could transform it whenever something happened. So they made a cycle, one card for each of these characters. That's a legendary creature on one side, and when something happens, they transform and they're a planeswalker on the other side.
Neat.
Because so they're telling the story of how they got
Yeah.
their first planeswalk, which is like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So,
Nice. And since one of the formats that we played is commander, can you use them as a commander?
you
Since
can
they're
use them as the
legendary
commander
creatures?
because they're legendary. They're legendary creatures on the front side. Like, you can't play them in the planeswalker side. The only way to get planeswalker side is to trigger their text.
That's cool. I like it.
So yes, they can be your commander, and then during the course of the commander game, they can turn into a planeswalker, and then they're a planeswalker for the rest of the game. So,
Brilliant. All right. Very good. We've talked about Star Trek. We talked about the Pathfinder game. We talked about Magic. Next week, as I said, Rogue will be joining me again, and we're going to talk about our trip to Origins and all the other games that we played, Battlestar and Legend of Korra and My Little Pony and the Star Trek stuff that we did do, and probably more about Pathfinder because we did spend a lot of time in generic tokens playing with Tanis and Chad and the folks from Paizo. So we'll talk about that, and we'll give you an update about what we accomplished. I think we're doing a scrapbooking party this weekend, so we'll probably put together some cards. We'll have a round of tribbles or two. We'll talk about that. But other than that, I think that wraps up for this week. Unless you have something for us.
I do. I was working on before this podcast. I was working on a 1E project that is coming out in August, and I thought I would spoil a card from it. So,
all right, I
think
we know the name of that, right? That was in the Gen Con stuff.
Yes, crossover.
All right.
This is one of the cards that appears in a starter deck for that set. It just happens to be the card I was working on when you called me, so I decided. So it's not finished. I don't have a picture to show you, and I don't have a number to show you, but it is in the set. So this is the card's name is Errol. It is a personnel, a non-aligned personnel that is universal. It has no staffing icon, but it has both the KCA icon and the Terran Empire icon.
Okay.
As well as the Mirror Quadrant icon. So, he's a civilian with anthropology and biology. So he's a support personnel. So civilian, anthro, bio. He's integrity 6, cunning 5, strength of 7. So he's not a super exciting personnel, but he will go in both decks. You can play him in KCA, you can play him in Terran Empire, and his lore says, typical male Terran slave, discussed grooming tips with a man posing as Mr. Sisko in 2371, envious of Ezri's freedom, but can't refuse the intendant.
Nice. That is a lot of names.
There are 3 names in there. So he names Mr. Sisko, he names the intendant, and Ezri. I think Ezri's only been named in like 1 or 2 other cards.
Nice.
And she is a KCA leader, so.
Brilliant. Sisko's a leader and the intendant's a leader, right?
Yes. So he can report to 3 people in the KCA deck. He's got the Terran Empire symbol, so he'll come into play there.
Nice. Sounds like a nice kind of a universal, laying the foundation. Can go in any deck. See a lot of play kind of guy.
He's doing a lot of work in this expansion.
Hit me with those stats again. What was he? Something 7?
657.
Not bad. And he's universal, so 8, 7, 9 lower decks. It's not bad. It's pretty good.
His playtest name was Sexy Slave Guy. If you go look on Memory Alpha, there's a scene where there's this like sexy slave guy like lounging behind the intendant.
You know what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to type that name into Google to search. That would be bad. That would be bad for my search history.
I agree, but if you want to go see who this character is, that is a large, attractive man in one of the scenes with the intendant. So, sexy slave guy.
Fair enough. All right. Well, thank you for that. We'll look forward to more as time comes up. More as time goes on for that set that's coming out at presumably Gen Con. Well, we're guessing the whole set's coming out of Gen Con. I don't know if that's a fair guess or not, but
The
we'll
whole
go with
set will
that for now.
probably not be. We are doing a pre-release at Gen Con, which means the way it's scheduled is that everybody will get one of the two starter decks and a booster pack, some number of extra cards, uh, and they can tweak their deck, and then they play with those. So it'll be a sealed deck. So people will see a lot of it, but I don't think the whole thing will be shown off until a couple weeks later when it comes out.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll see a lot of it then, and we'll see the rest of it in a few weeks after that. All right, that means probably we'll start seeing spoilers maybe a month before Gen Con.
Uh, Probably right around when Gen Con starts, I'd
Okay,
say is fair.
all right,
I know we'll be putting together the release promo this weekend. So
nice. Yeah, that was something I didn't include on my request for promos that I sent you right before we started. All right, very good. Then I think with that, that's probably a good place to wrap things up. Yes? Anything else?
nope. Thank you for letting me be on. That's always a pleasure.
No problem. Then very good. With that, I will say that's all the intelligence we have this week. So thanks, Charlie, for joining me. Rogue will be back next week. Thanks for Warp 11 for letting us use their music for the theme song. And I will expand my power universe and draw to end and call it a day. Thanks again. And we'll see you next week.